A 26-year-old woman is sitting on the kitchen floor, crying uncontrollably. The reason? She just found out she needs to change the car's oil. No tragedy occurred. No one died. She simply doesn't know how to schedule a car service, and it emotionally destroyed her. This scene is not fiction. It is a real video that went viral with millions of views, where a young adult collapses because adult life has arrived, and she was unprepared. In the past 2 years, a frightening wave of videos has flooded social media. Young women, primarily from Generation Z, recording themselves in total panic over everyday situations. Paying bills. Grocery shopping. Handling simple household problems. Managing the routine of having children. Tasks that previous generations solved without blinking have now become insurmountable mountains, causing public and viral emotional crises. What is happening? Why are so many young women collapsing in the face of adult reality? The answer is not simple, but it is urgent. We are witnessing the result of a generation raised in an environment completely different from any other in human history. A generation that grew up with instant validation, overprotection, and the promise that following their feelings would always lead to happiness. Now, that promise is shattering against the concrete of real life. Let's start with the obvious. Generation Z grew up immersed in technology. From childhood, these women had access to smartphones, social media, and a digital world where everything is editable, deletable, and customizable. In the online world, you can block anyone who disagrees with you. You can create an idealized version of your life. You can receive likes and comments that validate every thought and feeling. But real life has no block button. No filter. No algorithm that shows only what you want to see. This dissonance between digital expectation and physical reality is causing massive psychological damage. When you spend years in an environment where your emotional perception is the center of the universe, where your feelings are always validated, and where conflicts can be resolved with a click, you do not develop the tools needed to face real adversity. And adult life is made of adversity. But something deeper is happening here. Many of these women were raised with a specific narrative about independence and freedom. They repeatedly heard that they don't need anyone, that relationships are optional, that men are replaceable or even dispensable. The message was clear: you can have it all alone and still be happier that way. This ideology sounded empowering in motivational speeches and inspiring posts. The problem? No one mentioned the real cost of that independence. So what happens? These young women leave stable relationships, reject committed partners, or choose emotionally unavailable but exciting men. They genuinely believe they are making the right choice, that they are prioritizing themselves. A few years later, many find themselves alone, often with children, facing a pile of responsibilities that were previously shared. And then comes the brutal shock: life didn't get easier. It got exponentially heavier. The videos that go viral tell this story in raw form. A 24-year-old single mother crying because she has to take her child to the doctor, go shopping, clean the house, and work, all in the same day. Another young woman panicking because her car broke down, and she has neither money for the repair nor someone to ask for help. A third recording an emotional outburst about how hard it is to do everything alone while her friends are traveling and having fun. The pattern is always the same. First comes the emotional crisis. Then comes the public recording of that crisis. Next comes a flood of supportive or critical comments. And finally, in many cases, comes the crowdfunding campaign where strangers are invited to solve the problems the person cannot face alone. This cycle has created something dangerous: the monetization and glamorization of emotional fragility. Here is the inconvenient truth no one wants to say out loud. Adult life has always been difficult. Previous generations faced wars, economic depressions, incurable diseases, and hardships that would make modern challenges seem trivial. The difference is not that life has become harder now. The difference is that a significant portion of Generation Z was neither emotionally nor practically prepared to handle difficulty. Let's be specific about what being unprepared means. Many of these women never learned basic problem-solving skills. They never had to deal with prolonged frustration without an immediate emotional outlet. They never developed resilience because they were protected from consequences. They never learned discipline because they were raised in environments where structure was seen as oppression. And now, when life demands all these qualities simultaneously, they simply don't have these tools in their psychological arsenal. The result is what we are seeing. Intelligent and capable women being completely defeated by mundane tasks. Not because they are incapable, but because they never developed the emotional muscle necessary to bear the weight. It's like asking someone who has never exercised to run a marathon. Collapse is inevitable. And here is where the situation becomes even more complicated. When a man faces difficulties and complains publicly, the social response is usually harsh. He is called weak, lazy, or incompetent. But when a woman does the same, especially if she has children, the response is often massive sympathy. Donations start appearing. Offers of help flood the comments. This double standard, though well-intentioned, is actually reinforcing the problem rather than solving it. If you are enjoying this analysis, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And leave in the comments which city or country you are watching from, because this phenomenon is happening worldwide, and it is important to understand the global dimension of it. The central issue is not that these women are bad or flawed. The issue is that they were sold a lie packaged as empowerment. The lie that independence has no cost. That you can have all the benefits of a committed partner without any of the responsibilities of a serious relationship. That your feelings should always be prioritized above practical reality. And now, millions of young women are discovering in the most painful way possible that this lie has devastating consequences in real life. To understand the depth of this problem, we need to look at what really happens when these women face life alone. Viral videos show only the moment of collapse, but the full story is much more revealing. Let's talk about what happens behind the scenes, away from cameras and narratives edited for social media consumption. First, there is the initial shock of reality. Many of these young women came from homes where their parents handled everything or from relationships where their partner assumed a large part of the practical responsibilities. They didn't realize how many things were being done behind the scenes. Someone was paying bills on time. Someone was dealing with car problems. Someone was managing home repairs. Someone was making logistical decisions about the house and family. When this support network disappears, whether by personal choice or circumstances, reality hits like a speeding truck. Suddenly, all these responsibilities fall on a single person who never developed the skills to manage them. And here's what makes this particularly brutal: these responsibilities don't appear one at a time in an organized way. They arrive all at once, urgent, chaotic, and relentless. The car breaks down on the same day the child gets sick. The washing machine stops working the same week the rent is due. A problem at work explodes exactly when there is no food at home and bills are overdue. Real life does not respect your emotional capacity to handle problems. It simply happens, and you need to respond or suffer the consequences. But here's something rarely discussed openly. Most men are raised, even if unconsciously, to be problem solvers. From childhood, boys are encouraged to fix things, figure out how things work, not to cry when something goes wrong, but to seek a solution. This doesn't mean men don't feel emotions or don't suffer from difficulties. It means they are conditioned to process adversity differently. Many Generation Z women, on the other hand, were raised in environments where emotional expression was not only accepted but celebrated above all else. Feeling bad about something was reason enough to avoid doing it. If a task caused anxiety, the solution was to remove the task, not to develop tolerance for anxiety. If something seemed too difficult, the response was to seek emotional support, not to develop competence through practice. This difference in conditioning creates a devastating gap when life demands immediate action. When the car breaks down, the response cannot be to cry and post about it on social media. The response needs to be: research mechanics, compare prices, figure out alternative transportation while the repair is done, adjust the budget to cover the cost. This is the functional solution. But for someone trained to prioritize emotional validation over practical solutions, this process seems impossible. Now add children to the equation, and the problem multiplies exponentially. Children do not stop having needs because you feel overwhelmed. They need to eat, sleep, go to school, and receive constant attention and care. They make messes, get sick, fight with each other, and demand nearly uninterrupted supervision. For a single mother already on the verge of emotional collapse with her own responsibilities, adding the infinite demands of young children is like pouring gasoline on a fire. The effects on children are perhaps the most tragic aspect of this situation. Homes led by emotionally unstable and overwhelmed mothers often lack basic structure. There are no consistent schedules for meals or sleep. There are no predictable routines that give children a sense of security. There is no consistent discipline because the mother lacks the emotional energy to establish and maintain boundaries. External chaos reflects internal chaos. Worse, many of these children end up absorbing the mother's emotional instability. They grow up believing that constant emotional breakdowns are normal. They learn that responsibilities are optional and that feelings justify avoiding difficult obligations. Some even assume parental roles prematurely, caring for younger siblings or consoling their own mother. This pattern perpetuates the problem for the next generation. Here's another rarely mentioned aspect. Statistics show that most divorces are initiated by women. The rate is around 70%. This means that, in most cases, it is the woman who decides to end the relationship. The reasons vary widely, but a common theme emerges: emotional dissatisfaction. Not necessarily abuse, infidelity, or serious neglect. Simply the feeling that something is missing, that life could be more exciting, that they deserve more. This emotional dissatisfaction is often valid in the moment. Relationships can become monotonous. Routine can feel suffocating. The grass always seems greener on the other side. But what many do not adequately consider are the practical consequences of acting purely on feelings. Years later, when the dust settles and the reality of life alone sets in, many find themselves regretful. Not because the ex-partner was perfect, but because they did not properly assess the value of the functional partnership they had. This regret is rarely admitted publicly because there is enormous social pressure to maintain the narrative that leaving the relationship was the best decision. Admitting regret would be admitting a judgment error, and that goes against the entire culture of unconditional validation that permeates social media. So the suffering continues in silence, or is turned into viral content that blames everyone except their own choices. Modern society has created an environment where women are simultaneously encouraged to seek total independence and protected from criticism when they fail. This seems compassionate on the surface, but in practice it is cruel. When you shield someone from the consequences of their choices, you prevent that person from learning and growing. When you validate all feelings without questioning whether they align with reality, you create emotionally fragile adults incapable of navigating the inevitable adversities of life. We have reached the critical point where all this emotional fragility and practical unpreparedness meet the harshest reality of all. The consequences are real, permanent, and non-negotiable. It doesn't matter how many tearful videos you post. It doesn't matter how many people comment words of support. It doesn't matter how many excuses you create. Life keeps moving forward, demanding that you function, regardless of how you feel about it. Here's what no one is saying openly, but everyone is thinking. There is a massive gap between wanting independence and being prepared for the responsibilities that come with it. Real independence means that when something breaks, you fix it or find someone to fix it. It means that when money runs out, you work more or cut expenses drastically. It means that when you are exhausted, sick, or emotionally shattered, you still have to get up and take care of your children because there is no one else to do it. This is the part that motivational speeches on social media conveniently forget to mention. They sell the aesthetic of independence, the powerful pose, the empowering catchphrase. But they don't sell the reality of waking up at 3 in the morning with a febrile child, no money for a doctor, a car that doesn't work, and no one to call for help. They don't sell the moment when you realize that all those people who said they had your back simply disappear when you really need them. And here is where the situation becomes most devastating. Many of these women had exactly what they needed and threw it away. They had partners who worked, contributed financially, shared responsibilities, and were committed to the family. They were not perfect men, because perfect men do not exist. But they were functional, stable, and present men. And they were discarded because they didn't generate the emotion and excitement these women believed they deserved. What came next? In many cases, chaotic relationships with emotionally unavailable but physically attractive men. Men who promised excitement but offered no stability. Men who were good at creating intense passion but terrible at paying bills or taking responsibility. Some of these women even had children with these men, believing that intense love would be enough. It wasn't. It never is. Now these same women look back and see what they lost. They see ex-partners who rebuilt their lives, found new partners, and established stable families. They see friends who stayed in monotonous relationships but now have their own homes, family vacations, and a solid support network. And they see their own lives, chaotic, financially unstable, emotionally drained, and with no clear prospect of improvement. This contrast generates deep psychological pain that manifests in two main ways. The first is externally directed anger. These women blame ex-partners for not being exciting or understanding enough. They blame society for not providing adequate support for single mothers. They blame men in general for being emotionally inept or uncommitted. Any target will do, as long as it diverts responsibility from their own choices. The second form is paralyzing depression. When external anger solves nothing, when all the culprits have been identified but the situation doesn't improve, all that remains is the crushing weight of reality. These women wake up every day to the same endless struggle, with no relief in sight, no energy to continue, but no option to stop. The children still need to be fed. The bills still need to be paid. Life still needs to go on. The effects of this depression are visible in viral videos. Look beyond the tears and you see something deeper: existential despair. It's not just about changing car oil or paying a bill. It's about the horrifying realization that you built an unsustainable life and there is no easy way out. It's about waking up every day knowing you made decisions based on temporary emotions that produced permanent consequences. The children in these homes absorb all of this. They grow up seeing their mother in a constant state of emotional crisis. They learn that life is chaotic, unpredictable, and overwhelming. Many of these children develop severe anxiety because they never know what to expect. Others become emotionally numb because witnessing constant breakdowns teaches them to shut off feelings as a survival mechanism. But perhaps the most tragic part is this: many of these children, especially girls, are being programmed to repeat the same pattern. They are learning that feelings should be prioritized above all else. That responsibilities are optional when you don't feel capable. That emotional breakdowns are acceptable responses to normal difficulties. They are being groomed to become the next generation of women incapable of handling real life. And here is the truth that cuts deepest. Society is watching all this happen and is not only allowing it but encouraging it. Every time a viral emotional collapse video receives millions of comments of unconditional support, the behavior is reinforced. Every time a crowdfunding campaign succeeds in rescuing someone from the consequences of their own choices, the message is clear: you don't need to grow, you don't need to develop resilience, you just need to perform vulnerability publicly, and someone will save you. This is not compassion. This is cruelty disguised as kindness. True compassion would be to tell the hard truth. Life is hard, always has been, always will be, and you need to develop the skills to face it. True compassion would be to stop validating fragility and start cultivating strength. True compassion would be to teach these women that they are capable of far more than they imagine, but only if they stop using emotions as an excuse to avoid growth. So what can be done? Is there any way out of this destructive cycle, or are we simply doomed to watch entire generations of women collapse under the weight of basic adult responsibilities? The answer is complex, but it begins with something simple and brutally honest: accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it were. The first truth that must be accepted is this: no one is going to save you. There will be no dramatic last-minute rescue. There will be no magical solution that suddenly makes everything easy. That emotional validation from social media does not pay your bills. Those supportive comments do not fix your car. Those crowdfunding donations are temporary and unsustainable. At the end of the day, you are alone with your choices and their consequences, and the only person who can change your situation is yourself. This sounds harsh because it is harsh, but it is also liberating in a way few people understand. When you accept that no one else will solve your problems, you stop wasting energy waiting for external salvation and begin developing your own capabilities. When you accept that life is hard for everyone, not just you, you stop playing the victim and start seeking real solutions. The second truth is that competence is built through practice, not feelings. You don't learn to change car oil by watching motivational videos. You learn by researching, asking questions, trying, and eventually doing. You don't learn to manage finances by wishing money would magically multiply. You learn by making spreadsheets, cutting unnecessary expenses, working more when needed, and making tough decisions about priorities. Every practical skill you develop reduces your emotional dependence on external validation. Every problem you solve on your own increases your confidence to face the next one. Every time you do something difficult, even when exhausted, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than you thought. This is the true building of self-esteem, not the empty affirmations that flood social media. The third truth is perhaps the most important: Your children are watching everything. They are not just living in your house, they are absorbing your model of how adults function in the world. If you collapse at every difficulty, they will learn that collapse is the appropriate response. If you blame everyone else for your problems, they will learn that personal responsibility is optional. But if you face adversity with determination, even when it's hard, they will learn real resilience. This does not mean you need to be perfect or hide all emotions. It means you need to show that emotions do not control your actions. You can be afraid, but still do what needs to be done. You can be sad, but still get up and handle responsibilities. You can be overwhelmed, but still find ways to function. This is the legacy worth leaving for your children. Now, for those who have not yet made irreversible decisions, here is the crucial lesson. Functional partnerships are worth more than intense passion. That stable man who pays your bills, shares responsibilities, and is committed to the family may not make your heart race every day. But he will be there when the car breaks down at 3 in the morning. He will be there when you are sick and someone needs to take care of the children. He will be there building a solid future, while the exciting man is building only temporary memories. This does not mean accepting abuse or neglect. It means recognizing that emotional stability, reliability, and commitment are extremely valuable qualities, even if they are not as thrilling as drama and intensity. It means understanding that long-term relationships go through monotonous phases, and that this is normal, not a reason to abandon everything in search of novelty. For society at large, the lesson is to stop shielding people from their own consequences. Stop validating fragility as if it were a virtue. Stop treating adults as children incapable of hearing hard truths. Stop rewarding public emotional collapses with attention and financial resources. Instead, begin celebrating competence, resilience, and personal responsibility. Previous generations were not stronger because they were genetically superior. They were stronger because society did not tolerate prolonged fragility. When you fell, you were expected to get up. When you faced difficulties, you were expected to find solutions. This social expectation created pressure, yes, but it also created growth. Today we have more superficial compassion but less real character development. Here is the final truth that closes everything. Life does not become easier. You only become more capable. Responsibilities do not diminish. You only develop more skills to handle them. Problems do not disappear. You only get better at solving them. And the sooner you accept this and start working on your own development, the sooner your life will truly start to improve. The Generation Z women who are collapsing are not defective. They are simply unprepared. And unprepared can be corrected with work, practice, and willingness to face discomfort. But this requires a conscious choice to stop seeking validation and start seeking competence. It requires stopping blaming circumstances and starting to take responsibility. It requires growing, even when growth hurts. The question is not whether life is fair or easy. It is not. The question is whether you will let difficulties defeat you or use them to become stronger. This choice defines not only your future but the future of your children and everyone who looks to you as an example. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel and leave that like, because this kind of honest conversation needs to reach more people. The truth is not always comfortable, but it is always necessary.